The collapse of a major Chinese property developer could cause big problems in crypto. Welcome to CNBC After Hours. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos. Let's first take a look at the markets. Stocks were up big time this morning and hoped to recover from Monday's sell-off, but they just couldn't hold on to those gains. The Dow and S&P ended a little lower, and the Nasdaq ended a little higher. And on the crypto front, it was actually worse. Bitcoin and Litecoin were down more than 3.5% by 4 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, Ethereum was down 5%. Also, here are some other numbers that moved markets today. First up, $22.8 billion. It looks like Uber might finally turn a profit. The company updated its expected revenue for this quarter and now thinks that it can make at least $22.8 billion. CEO Dara Khosrowshahi told CNBC that he also expects high prices and long wait times to come down. All that positive news drove the stock 11% higher. Next, 94. As the debate around COVID booster shots continues, Johnson & Johnson released some new data supporting the efficacy of its COVID vaccine. J&J found that a second shot of its vaccine was 94% effective in preventing infection when administered 2 months after the first dose. The company also said that a shot 6 months after the first dose could be even more effective. That stock climbed about 0.5%. Lastly, 83 million. One of China's biggest property developers has a huge bill due this week, and it might not be able to pay it. Evergrande owes about $300 billion and 83 million of that is due on Thursday. Many investors are worried that the company can't actually afford to pay the bill. If it can't, well, that could spell trouble for the Chinese economy. S&P Global Ratings said that it doesn't expect the Chinese government to bail out the company. A collapse of Evergrande could cause problems way outside China's borders, though. The global economy and even crypto could take a hit. Tether, the world's largest stablecoin, said in recent days that it's not directly exposed to Evergrande's debt. Still, a lack of disclosure on where it does keep its money is spooking investors. Tether holds the majority of its reserves in what's known as commercial paper, short-term debt issued by companies. This has provided stability for Tether in the past, but CNBC's Kate Rooney tells us how a possible Evergrande collapse is leaving some investors with doubts.
Tether has gotten extremely popular in the past year or so. It is now the most popular stablecoin out there. A lot of traders use it to get in and out of cryptocurrencies quickly. So instead of exchanging that to something that might be in a bank account and completely cashing out of an exchange, a lot of traders like to keep a certain amount of money on the sidelines, but still on an exchange. One of the reasons that people are worried around the Evergrande scenario in China playing out and what it could do to the crypto markets is because of what's backing Tether. So it's one-to-one, but it's not backed by dollars. It's actually backed by commercial paper, mostly out of China. Now, there were worries about Tether and some of the potential exposure to Evergrande. Tether came out and said last week that they don't have any direct exposure to Evergrande. They tried to get ahead of this, said, to be clear, our commercial paper is not tied to Evergrande. Despite that, there is still worries that even though Evergrande's commercial paper might not be backing Tether, there are still other companies out there. There's sort of a ripple effect out there that if Evergrande did fail in a worst-case scenario, there are certain analysts that are worried that some of those Chinese companies that are at risk could be some of the companies that are actually backing Tether. The fear here is that people lose trust in Tether. The reason why it works, and that's similar to any fiat currency, including the dollar, is that people trust it. So if there is some scenario where there's fear around Tether and some of the reserves, there could be a scenario where there's some sort of run on the bank. Analysts I talk to say right now that's unlikely. It is still the most liquid, popular stablecoin out there, and traders still trust it, and they're still going to use it, and most of them don't necessarily care what it's being backed by as long as they can use it to get in and out of Bitcoin quickly.
All right, before we go, here's one last thing to know. COVID is officially America's deadliest pandemic. According to data from Johns Hopkins University, U.S. deaths from COVID-19 surpassed 675,000, the number of Americans who died from the 1918 flu. And this pandemic isn't over. Nearly 2,000 Americans die every day as the Delta variant continues to spread. You can stay up to date on the Delta variant along with everything else we talked about today by going to CNBC.com or downloading the CNBC app. That's all for today's edition of After Hours, but we'll be back here every Tuesday and Thursday, so we'll see you then.